Hello, friends! Something huge is happening in Northern Europe. For the first time in modern European history, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland are bringing their air forces closer together so they can operate almost like one powerful fighting system. And now, we are starting to see the same kind of movement at sea, as Nordic navies also begin working more closely than ever before. Just a few years ago, this level of military coordination would have sounded almost impossible. Yes, the Nordic countries have cooperated on defense for many years, but that cooperation was usually limited. Now, everything is changing fast. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 completely changed the security situation in Europe, and growing tension in the Arctic has made the Nordic region even more important. Even threats and pressure around Greenland have added more urgency. Because of all this, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland are not only increasing defense spending, but also moving toward a future where they can fight, defend, and respond together as one strong regional force. But today, we are going beyond the army. We are looking at Nordic air power, naval strength, missile systems, and even the growing role of space in modern warfare. So let's begin with the Navy. In 2021, the combined Nordic fleet, including surface ships and submarines, was around 140,000 tons. These navies were already capable, but they were mostly designed for national defense, coastal protection, and limited regional operations. Now, with new ships, upgrades, and modernization programs underway, that number is moving closer to 200,000 tons. By the mid-2030s, it could rise even higher as more vessels enter service across the region. But tonnage alone does not tell the full story. To understand the real meaning, we need to compare it with other European powers. France, for example, has a navy of more than 400,000 tons, built around a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier and designed for global missions, supported by a population of about 65 million people. The Nordic navies are not trying to copy France, but when combined, their growing strength is becoming impossible to ignore. And before we go deeper, take a second to like this video and subscribe. More than 98% of viewers watch without subscribing, and your support helps this channel continue bringing you deep, clear, and powerful breakdowns of military technology and global defense changes. The United Kingdom is also in a similar category, with a powerful carrier-based navy built for global operations and a population of around 67 million people. But here is the important point. Britain and France are not just focused on nearby waters. They operate true blue water navies, meaning their ships are expected to travel far from home and protect territories and interests across the Pacific, Indian, and Caribbean Oceans. So for the Nordic countries, the better comparison is actually much closer to Europe. Countries like Germany and Poland operate combat fleets somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 tons, supported by populations of around 30 to 80 million people. And that is what makes this so interesting. Even today, the combined Nordic fleet already sits in the same broad category as some of Europe's most capable naval powers. Now, let's break down what each Nordic country is actually doing. And this time, we'll start with Denmark, because Denmark has the largest navy by total tonnage. Denmark's fleet is built around big and flexible surface warships, especially the Ivar Huitfeldt-class frigates and the Absalon-class support ships. These ships give Denmark serious reach, allowing it to operate not only in the Baltic Sea, but also in wider NATO missions far from home. Yes, Denmark has faced some problems in recent years with maintenance and weapons readiness, but with more money now going into defense, the situation appears to be improving.
This is important because much of Denmark's current Arctic fleet is getting old. Ships like the Thetis class were built in the early 1990s, and they are now reaching the later stage of their service life. So these new Arctic ships are not just extra vessels. They are part of a full generational replacement of Denmark's older Northern Patrol Force, while also giving Denmark the ability to stay present for longer periods around Greenland and the wider Arctic region. Exactly when the Thetis-class ships will be retired is still uncertain, but some could potentially be shifted closer to the Faroe Islands or mainland Denmark to support Denmark's growing Baltic strategy. At the same time, Denmark is also investing heavily in maritime surveillance and protection of underwater infrastructure. This includes a dedicated vessel designed to monitor undersea cables and pipelines, supported by naval drones, sonar systems, and other modern sensors. And this expansion goes beyond traditional ships. Denmark is also buying 4 long-range Sea Guardian drones from the United States, which will give it a much stronger ability to watch huge areas of the Arctic and North Atlantic from the air. Although I have to say, buying these very expensive and advanced systems from a country that has repeatedly put pressure on Denmark over Greenland does feel a little strange, but maybe that's just me. Across the wider fleet, Denmark is adding more than 20 new vessels, including 4 ships for marine environment protection and mine-laying roles, along with many new home guard and patrol vessels. Denmark is also preparing for the future replacement of its larger warships later in the 2030s and 2040s. Now, Sweden is a very different case. Sweden's coastline sits largely along the shallow waters of the Baltic Sea, so its navy does not need the same kind of large, heavy blue water ships used by countries like Denmark and Norway. Instead, Sweden focuses on ships and submarines designed for fast, smart, and dangerous operations in coastal waters. At the heart of the Swedish Navy is its submarine force. Sweden currently operates 5 submarines, including 3 Gotland-class boats and 2 older Södermanland-class submarines.
These submarines are built for the Baltic Sea's shallow, crowded, and complicated waters, where staying hidden and moving carefully can decide the outcome of a battle. In this kind of environment, speed alone is not enough. Stealth, patience, and smart positioning matter more. And with Sweden planning to bring in 2 new Blekinge-class submarines later in the decade, it is clearly working to strengthen one of Europe's most capable non-nuclear submarine forces. On the surface, Sweden's navy may look smaller compared to countries with big ocean-going fleets, but it is highly specialized for its own battlefield. The main strength of Sweden's surface fleet comes from 5 Visby-class corvettes, stealthy warships designed specifically for operations in the Baltic Sea. These ships form the backbone of Sweden's surface combat power. Alongside them, Sweden also operates 2 older, upgraded corvettes, but their role is more limited compared to the newer Visby-class ships. This shows Sweden's long-term naval strategy very clearly. Sweden is not trying to build a huge navy with massive ships. Instead, it wants to make the Baltic Sea extremely difficult and dangerous for any enemy force to operate in. Small, stealthy ships, quiet submarines, mine warfare, anti-ship missiles, and unmanned systems all work together to create a layered defensive trap. But now, even this strategy is evolving. Sweden is upgrading the Visby-class corvettes with better sensors and stronger air defense, including the British Sea Scepter missile system. At the same time, Sweden is developing 4 new Luleå-class surface combatants, which will be much larger than anything Sweden currently operates. These ships are expected in the 2030s, and while the final design is still being shaped, international cooperation will likely play an important role, possibly with the United Kingdom. Sweden is also continuing to modernize its submarine force. The existing Gotland-class submarines are being upgraded so they can remain useful for longer, while the new Blekinge-class submarines are expected to enter service in the early 2030s. This will make Sweden's underwater capability even stronger. Add to this Sweden's continued investment in mines, anti-ship missiles, and unmanned systems, and you can see the bigger picture. Sweden wants to control the Baltic not through size, but through pressure, stealth, and denial from every direction. Now, Norway is a completely different story. To understand Norway's navy, you first have to understand the size and importance of the waters it must protect. Norway has a population of just over 5 million people, but it is responsible for one of the largest maritime areas in Europe. Its coastline stretches more than 25,000 kilometers when fjords are included, and its exclusive economic zone covers around 2.4 million square kilometers. Only France and the United Kingdom have larger maritime areas in Europe, with Denmark close behind Norway. But Norway's position is not just large, it is extremely strategic. To the north is the Barents Sea, where Russia's Northern Fleet and nuclear submarine bases are located. To the west is the North Atlantic, where vital sea routes connect North America and Europe. This is the world Norway's navy operates in: huge distances, brutal weather, deep waters, and some of the most sensitive military activity on the continent. If Russia ever decided to use its Northern Fleet in a major conflict, Norway would be one of the first lines of defense. That is why Norway's navy is built differently. It is not a massive fleet, but it is built around high-end platforms designed to strike fast, survive, and delay a much larger Russian force until reinforcements arrive from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and other Nordic and NATO navies. At the center of Norway's fleet are 4 Fridtjof Nansen-class frigates. These are Norway's main surface warships, designed for anti-submarine warfare, air defense, and long-range operations as part of NATO task groups. In simple words, Norway's navy may be small in numbers, but its mission is one of the most serious in Europe. Watch the north, protect the Atlantic routes, and stand directly in front of one of Russia's most powerful naval forces.
They are the backbone of Norway's ability to move beyond its own coastline and operate deep into the wider Atlantic. But alongside these larger frigates, Norway also has one of the most interesting naval platforms in Europe, the Skjold-class corvettes. These are very different from traditional warships. They are smaller, extremely fast, and among the fastest military vessels in the world. Armed with powerful naval strike missiles, they are built for coastal warfare, not open ocean battles. These ships can reach speeds of up to 60 knots, allowing them to move quickly through Norway's complex coastline, hide inside fjords, appear suddenly, fire anti-ship missiles at Russian targets, and disappear again before the enemy can respond. Beneath the surface, Norway operates 6 Ula-class submarines, and even though they are aging, they still play a very important role. These submarines help Norway monitor the North Atlantic and Arctic, especially the key underwater routes used by Russian submarines. Norway also uses mine warfare vessels, including the Alta and Oksøy classes, to protect coastal waters and secure important sea routes. But perhaps Norway's most powerful naval tool is not a warship in the normal sense. It is an intelligence vessel called FS Marjata, often described as a listening ship. This ship operates in the high north and is designed to collect signals, track activity, and monitor Russian submarine movements from the Kola Peninsula. In fact, Marjata is often seen as one of the first Allied platforms able to detect and follow Russian submarine activity before many others even know it is happening. Looking ahead, Norway is preparing for a major naval transformation. Its current Ula-class submarines will be replaced by the new Type 212 common design submarines, developed together with Germany, with deliveries expected from the end of this decade and into the 2030s. At the same time, Norway is extending the life of its current submarines, so it does not lose underwater coverage during the transition. This means that for a short period in the early 2030s, Norway could potentially operate close to 10 submarines. On the surface, Norway's 4 Fridtjof Nansen-class frigates will eventually be replaced by new frigates based on the British Type 26 design, with deliveries expected around 2030. This makes a lot of sense because the British and Norwegian navies already train and operate together often, and these new ships would fit smoothly into NATO and UK carrier groups. Now, Finland's navy is built in a completely different way. Finland is not trying to build a blue water fleet or send ships across the world. Its navy is a coastal force designed almost entirely for the Baltic Sea. Instead of large warships, Finland relies on smaller, fast vessels built for shallow waters, mine warfare, missile attacks, and coastal defense. At the center of the fleet are 4 Hamina-class missile boats, supported by many mine warfare vessels and coastal defense units. Together, they create a navy focused on controlling Finland's nearby waters rather than projecting power far away. But Finland is now making a major upgrade. It is building 4 new corvettes, each around 4,300 tons, with deliveries expected between 2027 and 2029. These ships are much larger and more capable than anything Finland currently operates, and in many other navies they would probably be called frigates. Finland is also rebuilding its coastal artillery, which was once one of its strongest defensive tools. Older fixed guns are being replaced with mobile 155mm artillery systems that can strike both enemy ships and land targets. Still, compared to Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, Finland's navy is not receiving the same level of expansion, and that makes sense because Finland shares NATO's longest land border with Russia, so much of its defense focus naturally remains on the land. Now, with the navies covered, let's move into the air. Across Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, the Nordic countries currently operate around 220 combat aircraft, and more than 150 of them are modern fighters. That number alone already makes Nordic air power one of the most serious military forces in Europe, but what matters even more is how these aircraft are now being connected into one coordinated system. This combined air force includes Norway and Denmark's F-35s, Finland's current Hornets and its growing number of F-35s, and Sweden's powerful Gripen fleet. By 2035, the total number of aircraft will increase only a little, but the real change will be in quality. By then, almost every major Nordic fighter should either be a modern F-35 or the advanced E version of the Gripen. That means the Nordic countries will not just have more aircraft, they will have smarter, more connected, and far more capable aircraft. We already covered this in more detail in our episode on Nordic Air Force integration, including how much this future force depends on the F-35 and what that means with today's changing relationship with the United States. You can find that video in the description and pinned comment. But for today, the main point is this: air power is not just about fighter jets. If we look at the wider picture, the combined Nordic air forces also include around 24 transport aircraft, and that number will grow as Sweden receives its new Embraer Millennium aircraft. They also operate around 14 intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, along with roughly 170 helicopters of different types. These numbers are expected to rise slightly, but more importantly, the platforms themselves are getting more modern, with systems like Sweden's GlobalEye and Finland's Rapcon X adding stronger eyes and ears across the region. But even with all this, air power alone does not guarantee control of the sky. If it did, Russia would have dominated Ukraine from the air long ago. The lesson from Ukraine is very clear. A strong air defense network can stop a larger air force from operating freely. And this is where the Nordic countries are changing fast. Back in 2021, air defense across the region was limited and uneven. Norway and Finland mainly relied on NASAMS as their key medium-range system. Sweden had a mix of short-range systems and was only just beginning to bring Patriot into service. Denmark had almost no real ground-based air defense, apart from a few shoulder-launch systems. But today, the picture looks very different. Finland is building a layered air defense network that combines NASAMS with longer-range systems like David's Sling, giving it much better reach against aircraft and missile threats. Sweden has brought Patriot fully into service and is expanding its defense with several IRIS-T batteries. Norway is strengthening its own NASAMS network, focusing on mobility, better integration, and 4 additional batteries, along with mobile launchers. And Denmark is making the biggest jump of all. In 2022, Denmark had almost no ground-based air defense. Now it is building a full layered system with both medium-range and long-range protection. In fact, while some countries are choosing a more focused path, Denmark seems to be going wide, adding almost every European air defense system it can realistically get. And when you put all of this together, air forces, navies, missiles, drones, submarines, surveillance aircraft, and air defense, you start to see the real story. The Nordic countries are no longer just building separate national forces. They are building a connected regional defense system, one that is becoming more integrated, more coordinated, and more capable of acting as one. And that changes the military balance in Northern Europe. Alone, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland may look like small or medium-sized military powers, but together they become something much larger. A serious regional force designed not only to defend territory, but to deny access, deter aggression, and stop a war before it begins. There is one major area we did not cover this week, and that is space and launch capabilities across the Nordic region. I'm currently out at cold response, so time is a little limited, but we will return to that topic in next week's video, based on February's community vote. That episode will focus on European missile and space systems, and will bring this missing piece into the bigger picture. Until then, from a wet and cold northern Norway, thank you for watching and have a good weekend. If you found this deep dive useful, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the technology shaping modern warfare. The next few years will be extremely important for Nordic defense, and we'll be here to follow every major development. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.